Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It is 6 o'clock. So the special call meeting for Wednesday, September 25th is called to order. Ms. Rainey, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor,
Good evening.
council members, and City Manager, Mr. Clark. This is the roll call for the special call meeting of September 25th, 2024. Mayor Butler,
Present.
Councilmember James. Let the record reflect, Councilmember James is not in attendance. Councilmember Gutierrez,
Present.
Councilmember Akins Wells,
Here.
Councilmember Mears.
Here.
Mayor Butler, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. New business, council discussion regarding the resignation of council member Dabuz Antoine in Ward 2 and requirements for a special election. Background and history. In response to the unforeseen and immediate resignation of Councilman Antoine, a special call meeting has been scheduled for today. This meeting is of critical importance as the governing body must decide whether to initiate a special election to fill the vacancy created by Councilman Antoine's departure. The term for this vacant seat is set to expire on December 31st, 2025. The decision at hand is whether to hold the special election in November of this year, or defer it until March 2025.
Here.
At 6:02.
6:02.
Okay, that is it. That's, so Mr. Clark, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, ma'am. So governing body members, good evening. According to section 5-17 of the city's charter, in the event of a vacancy in the office of mayor or council member for any reason, the remaining city council members are obligated to call a special election to fill the remainder of the unexpired term. And so we're here tonight to decide. We have the time to call the election in November, but it is staff's recommendation that we conduct this election in March to give us ample time to prepare for the election, hold qualifying, and then subsequently, we are asking, as we did with the previous year last year, even though we were fortunate not to have an election, we're asking that Clayton County Board of Elections handle this election. Again, our city clerk will serve as the qualifying officer, but we think it will be a more streamlined approach, as well as it will ensure that it remains unbiased.
Any questions or comments, Councilwoman James?
Yes, so first question is, what would be the qualifying fee?
The qualifying fee is statutory also. It's 3% of the annual salary, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
But would it be prorated,
No, because the salary would still be the same.
even though it's only a limited amount of time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my only concern with pushing it to March is that we do have a regular election in November, so that whoever wants to qualify for that position, if they run in March, they will have to turn around and pay another qualifying fee to run for the November. So I would be more inclined to try to have it in November this year as opposed to pushing it to March.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
just my,
Yes, ma'am, Councilwoman James. I also think of, if you hold the election in November, if an individual really wants to get out and market and campaign, it gives them a shorter time period in order to do that or collect said funds, because they'll only have a little under 2 months to do so.
You'd have to qualify by October the 7th. We
Oh.
have to call the next by October 7th.
oh,
Now, I thought that it's a 90-day requirement in order to call a special call election for the November election. Is that not the case?
29 days, 29 days. To-
Councilman Gutierrez?
is-
Okay,
First off, I hope that Councilman Antoine is in good health. I don't know. I don't know that, but I hope he is. I guess my question is, how do we go from November to March? Why can't it be January or February? We should skip 2 months.
Excellent question, Councilman Gutierrez. Again, the election calendar for the state of Georgia statutorily as well. So each year, the Secretary of State Elections Office establishes an annual calendar of election activity, and you have to follow that said calendar.
Got you. So it has to be those 2 days. Okay. So Can you give me the reasons against why you're recommending it in March instead of November?
Because I feel for the incumbent, again, this is totally a decision of the governing body. I feel for the incumbents that will run for this seat, you'll have a longer period. As well as from an operational standpoint, it gives staff time to prepare for the election. Typically, your election staff prepares 9 months out for an election, and this election would be no different. And so if the governing body chose to move forward with the November election, what would happen is we would essentially coordinate efforts once approved with the Clayton County Elections Board for a separate ballot to be completed for the special election in Forest Park. It would run concurrent with the presidential election.
Because an election is already happening in essence, and you said the only thing we're doing as a staff is qualifying, right? That's a Forest Park. So what preparations do we need? Like, I just don't know.
Well, that's the first part. Preparation for qualifying, preparation of your qualifying packets, et cetera. But again, the decision is solely based upon this governing body. It's just in instances, and I want to say myself and Winston have been in this situation in recent years several times. It just always fared easier to have more time to prepare for an election so that nothing was rushed, nothing was missed, all of the paperwork was properly filed, et cetera. But again, it's a decision of this governing body, and we are fine either way. It's just our recommendation to have it in March.
Thank you.
Councilman Wells?
Yes, I would go with you all's recommendation because I don't want to put a strain on the employees. I don't know what all it takes to prepare, but that's a short time, and it's also a short time for you said something about October 7th?
It's like, it would be, you heard, it'll be October, the 7th. It has to be 29 days before the election. The election will be November the 5th. So we'd have to go 29 days before that, which would be October the 7th. So we would have to call the election on the 7th. People would have to have a date where people can qualify so that they have to campaign and do everything in that window from October the 7th to November the 5th. And that's a short window. I don't know how much interest there would be in the public, the word to get out. It's a decision of the governing body. You make whatever decision in your considered wisdom you feel is appropriate. However, Mr. Clark's recommendation is predicated on a short window for the staff to get prepared and for the public to generate interest, qualify, campaign, and run.
Right.
And the other thing I'd like to add, Mayor Butler, I'm sorry, Mr. Butler. Just for clarification, we have to call for the election 29 days before. At what point does it have to be posted in the legal organ? Because that would also limit us because the legal organ is only posted one time in the week. And that will put us at the 9th.
Yeah, coordinating with the legal organ based on when they publish, we'd have to coordinate with that, yes.
And then the second part of it would be, if, and I don't think legally it could happen, but we still have to go into, and we've started the conversations with Clayton County, but if the city decided that it wanted to hold its own election, the only certified election superintendent in the city would be me as city manager, and I would ask you not to put me in that position. I know that in the past, the city has hired an outside consultant or an outside contractor to convene the election, but we're just putting all of the options on the table for you to make the most informed decision possible based upon the statutory dates that have been provided by legal counsel, as well as understanding that if this governing body decides that you want to have an election in November, the executive offices will ensure that it is ran to the best of its ability and extremely transparent. We just want to provide all options for both dates.
Yeah, so as I was stating, I do think March is good because we want to give the opportunity to those that are interested in running to prepare, as if we would want to prepare if it was us. So yeah, I think March is great.
Councilman Mears?
Well, I think that March is decent because you got a lot involved and we want to do it right and fair. And if we hurry, we may make a mistake. So I'm willing to go along with whatever the diocese says, but I think the longer period would be better. March.
Yes, and I would agree. While we are within our statutory limits and time-wise to move forward with the November election, I'm giving people adequate time to run a successful campaign. That takes time. And so, while I will leave the motion open, I've heard arguments for both.
No argument.
Madam Mayor, may I
Yes,
ask
ma'am.
one other question?
Mhm.
Mr. Clark, you had mentioned that you had reached out to the county. Do you have any input as to whether their willingness to run the election on our
So
behalf?
I definitely, great question, Councilwoman James. I definitely think they are willing to run the election. I think it would be easier to do a March because it would allow them time to get through the presidential election, as well as I've sent some initial budget estimates as to what they've charged other municipalities to conduct their elections. When we conducted our own, I believe I ran a report last year, it was $20,000 plus or something like that. When Forest Park conducted their own election, and the new numbers that the county quoted just last year for a similar situation was valued at $11,704. And again, with that, it's the same process. You know, the only difference, I believe, the city always used paper ballots. The county would definitely use the machines. You'd still have your early voting period. The city would, through the city clerk, would run the qualifying period as well as absentee ballots. Everything would be exactly the same, precincts and all.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I'm gonna
I'm
ask for a
sorry.
motion. Yes, ma'am.
do have one more question.
Sure.
Do the governing body set the qualifying period, or is that just something that's
It's statutory as well.
statutory? Okay, so I know there's a minimum and there is a maximum.
Absolutely. So the minimum is 3 days and the maximum is 5 days.
Okay,
And-
that's up to the discretion of the.
I think it would help us, since I haven't been here through an election cycle, we were fortunate not to have one last year for the general. So it would be helpful for staff, if at all possible, we can have 3 different motions if legal counsel agrees. The first motion would be the time period in which this governing body wanted to conduct the election, either the November or the March date. The second vote would be whether or not the governing body consents for staff to work with the Clayton County Elections Division to devise a MOU to bring back before this body for approval. And then the third motion would be based upon the time period in which you select within the first motion, the amount of days you wish for the city to run early voting. I don't know if it's been a normal for the city to run 3 days for qualifying or
I
5
think
days.
we've done 5. Okay,
And that would just set the record straight as we prepare for this election.
Okay.
all right. So the first motion would be for the time period, either the November election or the March 2025 election. What does the governing body wish to do?
I make a motion that we, I don't know how to say it, we do March. If we go with March, what do you?
I'll
The
second.
special election.
All right, that was Councilwoman Wells, the second by Councilwoman James. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Rainey?
Councilwoman James.
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Yes.
Councilmember Akins Wells.
Yes.
Councilmember Mears.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Now, the next motion would be to direct staff to work with the Clayton County Elections Board to create and bring back a MOU. Is that it? Okay.
So move.
That was Councilwoman James. Is there a second?
I second.
That was Councilman Mears. Is there any discussion? Ms. Rainey?
Councilmember James.
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Yes.
Councilmember Akins Wells. Councilmember Mears.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. And the last motion would be for a qualifying period. Would it be the desire of the council to set it for 3 days or 5 days? I will leave that open.
I'll make a motion, we leave it for 5.
All right, that was Councilman Mears. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That was Councilwoman James. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Rainey?
Councilmember James.
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Yes.
Councilmember Akins Wells.
Yes.
Councilmember Mears.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Mayor Butler, prior to us adjourning, just one final piece of business before we begin working on this election. Now state law allows for you to conduct one day on a Saturday voting is mandatory, and you have the option to go with a second on a Saturday. So if we can establish all of this business tonight, we can fully prepare for this election, and the only missing element will be for this governing body to approve the MOA, or we can bring back those dates with the MOA and we can do it at a time.
Hmm.
And you also have the option to do Sunday voting.
I don't think we've historically done that Sunday, have we?
And it's
No, I
new,
think
it's
so.
newer legislation.
So you said Saturday voting, 1 or 2 Saturdays and or Sunday.
What we'll do to make it more
Maybe
simplistic,
bring back the
we'll
MOU.
bring back the MOU with that election calendar.
All right, thank you. Now, I do have one item for executive session that should be very brief. So I'm going to ask for a motion to recess and enter into executive session for personnel, litigation, real estate, or legal matters.
So move.
We don't have that. Oh, closing comments. Oh, yes. Closing comments, Councilwoman James, before we get into that.
Thank you all for coming out.
Councilman Gutierrez?
Yeah, thank you for coming out. Please be safe with the weather and if you don't have our newsletter yet, we send updates there about the storm and everything else for this party.
Councilwoman Wells?
So thank you to everyone for coming out, and what Councilman Gutierrez said, y'all please be safe. If you don't have to leave home, don't leave home, and congratulations to those that get to stay home. And two, I would just like to say to, as the governing body, like, can we make sure, and I know we haven't done it in the past, but I just noticed it when I was looking at the agenda, like it should be in certain situations, well, in all situations, the public should be able to speak. And so I don't think just because it's a special call meeting, that we don't have that on the agenda, because again, we work for the public. So I just want to make sure that option is there. Thank you.
Councilman Mears?
Yes, ma'am. Thank everyone for coming in this bad weather. Be safe, stay home if you can, and good luck.
All right, thank you all for coming out. Is there a motion to recess and enter into executive session for personnel, litigation, real estate, or legal matters? Okay, that was Councilman Mears. Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
That's Councilwoman James. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Minutes.
Mayor Butler.
Is that everybody? All right, is there a motion to adjourn the executive session and reconvene into our special call meeting?
So moved,
That's
Councilwoman James.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Mr. Clark.
Can I get a second?
Second.
By Councilwoman Wells. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
Aye.